Hello, I'm your host David Newson, and welcome to Coated in Gold. Inspired by kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold, this podcast explores the fractured yet beautiful pieces of our modern lives. Drawing on my diverse career and deep curiosity about business and the philosophy of modern living, I dive into compelling stories and speak with high-performing, multi-dimensional individuals to uncover moments of insight and learning. So, let's get started. Welcome to this week's episode of Coated in Gold. I'm your host, David Newson. I have to tell you that the headspace I am coming to you all with today is appropriate for our topic. It's Friday. I have carved out a chunk of my day to record this episode, but I would be lying to you if I didn't admit that there is a very real part of my mind that is still on all of the other work that is piling up in the background. So, what is today's topic? I want to talk about our relationship with work. I'm lucky that I love what I do. When I'm deep in my work, my brain releases all those amazing neurochemicals like dopamine. I'm invested and activated. I don't get tired. I don't need caffeine. In a flow state, my brain is simply telling me to go, 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 and then it's hard to shut that off. I wouldn't say I'm a workaholic. People in my life might say it, but I wouldn't. It can take a toll on everything from my body to my relationships with others, to constantly being this deep into my work. I have a big birthday coming up this January, and it's caused a moment of reflection and a time for me to think deeply about what I've been through, where I am now, and how I can improve this next chapter of my life. I'm questioning for the first time how much of a priority I want my work to be over all the other amazing things in my life. In particular, my family. But I know I'm not alone. Let's face it, most Americans are obsessed with work, even when they don't want to be. I recently read an article from the Harvard Business Review, Confessions from 1,000 Workaholics. They surveyed high performers around the globe who had come to realize that they had an unhealthy relationship with work. And I have to admit, as I was reading through, a lot of what they said resonated. I'm curious as I go through if you'll relate too. Some of the ways people realized they were workaholics included things like sneaking out to check work email when you should be engaged socially. Well, oops. I know when work is getting to me, my brain will start to tell me, come on, David, your time could be spent right now in your office. I know it's family time, but what about all those emails? Another telltale sign of workaholism is having thoughts of work interrupt your ability to sleep. Well, check that off the list for me too. I know when I have multiple projects going on and deadlines coming up, thoughts of what's coming next will bounce around. This one I have been able to manage a little bit better, and I'll touch on this more at the end when we discuss strategies for a better work balance. One anecdote from the HBR article that really stuck with me was a woman who was on vacation in Mexico, okay, picture this, on a boat in the middle of the ocean. Her hard work had earned her this time off in a beautiful city on a beautiful boat. And she was thinking about how she should respond to an email. Can you imagine? I am determined to not make the same mistake. Workaholism can also have a major impact on your health. For those of us that work at desks, you'd think that you're safe from workplace injuries. But people get everything from carpal tunnel to back problems, all just from sitting hunched over our keyboards for 8+ hours at a time. You can also start to lose touch with the natural cues of your body. I have experienced this firsthand. I'm an entrepreneur now, but when I was working in a corporate setting, I was traveling all the time, in meetings for both East and West Coast time zones. I wanted to be a high performer, and I was surrounded by other high performers. So I would be in meetings from literally 8 o'clock in the morning until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. Then I was back on the road for 1 or 2 weeks at a time, maybe a month here and there. It got to the point where I was in back-to-back meetings so often that I would need to interrupt for a bio break mid-meeting because I had not left a single moment in my schedule for me. I want to pause on the term bio break for a moment. It's a piece of corporate lingo that we have created because we need to professionalize our most basic human needs. Eating, drinking water, going to the bathroom. These are all fundamental things we need to do to survive, and we are hiding and apologizing for it in our language at work. Sterilize it, professionalize it, now back to work. Nowadays, I make sure my time is managed well enough that I can do everything I need to get done in a day and still dedicate a moment for lunch. But I still catch myself trying to make exceptions because I want to meet with a client that day, and managing other people's time can be tricky. I have to pause, step back, question myself if this is all really as urgent as it can feel. Another unexpected way I have seen my work take a toll on my body is my teeth. Now, I've been battling chronic gum disease for years. I could not figure out what was going on. I don't smoke. I have good oral hygiene, flossing and brushing twice a day, maybe even more. So I went in to see a periodontist, and he asked me about myself. I tell him I'm a CMO. The next question he asked was, "Are you stressed?" Well, of course I'm stressed. Then he asks me what I'm doing to manage my stress. And I had to pause. I didn't accidentally walk into a therapist's office by mistake, right? As I was sitting in his chair, I had to ask myself if I was in control of how I was managing my work stress. I'm taking strategies and wearing a night guard now to better take care of my body while I'm working. You'd think with all of these negative health effects, we'd all just get up and walk away. But our modern work culture works on our brains in an interesting way. There are some qualities of addiction that are universal, be it drugs or gambling, or even less immediately harmful habits like overusing our phones. Thankfully, as conversations around all of this are becoming more normal in daily life, we can start to recognize them. What is happening in our minds when we have these workaholic tendencies? Sometimes work can trigger your fight or flight response. You know the feeling you've had right before a big meeting? Your face is flushed. Your hands and feet get kind of cold or numb. The cortisol is rushing through your body, and these chemicals that were meant to protect you from the bear in the woods suddenly make you sweat through your shirt in an air-conditioned office. Often, we're chasing that sweet dopamine of success. You go into that meeting and you nail it. You get praise from your leaders. You get praise from your peers. You feel the satisfaction of completing something you worked so hard on, and your brain goes wild. So we just keep cycling between these highs and lows because even though you're not in any danger and you may not be winning any awards, the stakes of our careers can still feel very high. For me, I am lucky to be fueled by my passion for my job. At this point in my career, I love chasing new business. I love being able to flex my decades of experience and find new challenges. It's satisfying to use my brain to solve hard problems and show off a little bit of my mental acuity. Working with new clients means I get a new set of puzzles to sort through every day. And I have to confess, maybe I've always loved work. Growing up in a small town in upstate New York, my dream was to be a CEO in the big city. When I had a paper route, I owned an adding machine. It was actually my first purchase, so I could track my totals for the week. I wanted to know if I needed to deliver papers earlier when someone would be home so I could collect. Later on in college at Brigham Young University, I was asked in a class to write what I wanted my obituary to read. I said the retired CEO of AT&T. I'm not sure why AT&T specifically, although I did love the phone, I guess. I was also a huge fan of all the self-help business books. I've read most of them. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. I even listened to cassette tapes of Zig Ziglar, a salesman and motivational speaker, on my drive to my retail job every day. You know, sometimes I wonder if part of my fixation on working was in part an answer to anxiety about money instability. I was one of 5 kids, and my dad left my family and moved pretty far away when I was young. I think I was 9 years old. In some families, divorce can be smooth, but it's almost always expensive. Overnight, our socioeconomic status changed. It became a question of if we were going to pay the mortgage month to month. Even though we never ultimately ended up in poverty, you still felt it in the air. It wasn't there all the time, but it would creep in often enough that it stuck with me. My mom was also definitely not going to be able to cover college tuition for all 5 kids. She helped as much as she could, but it was the expectation that we would be working to fill in the gaps. It was also the expectation that you would be grateful for your ability to do all of these things. I'm privileged to have always been able to take care of myself through adulthood. I now work with clients in wealth management, and I've learned that even if you have 5, 10, 15, 25, $50 million, these formative memories around money stay with you into adulthood. This scarcity mindset can shape how you make financial decisions, even when you have more than enough to live comfortably. I also wonder if some of our anxieties around work are related to how much job stability has changed over the years. I grew up in the 1980s, and careers used to be stable. If you went to college, that was your ticket to a better life. My mom's family were bricklayers, and her wisdom at the time was that when your job is based on your body's ability to perform, it can be risky. College was supposed to be my ticket to long-term security. When I entered the workforce, it was expected that I would earn more and collect a pension. You could work for a company your entire career, and in 30 to 40 years, get a big retirement party. A pension that could afford you a good car, a house, and a good life well into retirement. Well, over time, it seems like we've lost this security. In fact, I'm pretty sure I know we've lost this security. Gen Xers are also known as the generation that it was the big experiment with the 401k. And here we are, experimenting literally with 401ks. Layoffs happen constantly, pensions are rare, and many people in the United States wonder if they will be able to retire at all. So we all work a lot, and we work hard. Going back into my own history with work made me curious about the deeper history of American work culture. I'll link to the sources for all of this in the show notes for all the hard facts, but here's my understanding of what I found. Going all the way back to England, in the time of lords and peasants, workers actually only worked about 175 days a year. Not even half the year. The other half was spent on feast days and holidays and living their lives with their families. Then the Protestant Revolution happened, and with it grew capitalism in pretty much the form we all know it today. These Protestants believed that not everyone was secured a place in heaven, and the only way to ensure your spot was to work hard in your community. Now, it's not my place to dispute this belief at all. Stepping away from the questions of religion, I can't help but put my marketer hat on. Marketers are always trying to understand how people's minds work, creating magnetism and uncovering unmet needs. These needs give rise to desire for products or services that a company makes available. So if it were me in this time period, running a business with workers or selling my wares, and I want to make sure people have money to buy them, how do I get people to work really hard? Telling them it will get them into heaven isn't a bad tactic. Of course, if you were someone who believed that working would earn you a place in heaven, it also meant you would want to make sure all your loved ones worked hard too, so they could come with you. These Protestants were the colonizers who would eventually come to America and shape the culture of our early founders. During and after the American Revolution, it was also critical for the country to earn a lot of money very quickly so our nation could sustain itself independently. Now, make no mistake, this was like the greatest startup that ever existed. They arrived and had to bootstrap a bunch of unruly colonies into something resembling a country. They needed to have a product market fit as quickly as possible. And by some miracle, we did it. Fast forwarding through a lot of important history, which is worthy of its own podcast, we jump into the Industrial Revolution. Americans are moving away from farm work to working in factories. And now we are working up to 100 hours a week. Oh, and don't forget, children are also in the factories because no one is earning high enough wages to sustain their families. We are in radically different times than the peasants who fought to emerge from the monarchy. And some pretty awful things like the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire happen. So this kicks off the labor movement that set the 40-hour work week, gave us weekends, and even established the federal minimum wage. Post-World War II, white men returning from war were supported by the GI Bill, a government mandate that paid for college, helped them buy houses, and encouraged men to return to work to provide them with, you guessed it, purpose. Of course, these government supports were not doled out equally to women, people of color, and other groups. Fast forwarding again to today, the average number of work hours has creeped up to 47 per week. Pulling back from the country's history to my own, I remember being instilled with a Mormon work ethic that is pretty reminiscent of what the early Protestants believed. Work ethic was instilled in the church and at home. My parents believed in honest, hard work. That phrase I heard over and over again, honest, hard work. At church, they would say things like, faith without works gets you nowhere. Going back to marketing, if you want to create a model or a system that sits deeply within a human being, that drives human behavior toward work and wealth creation, religious work ethic, and by extension, workaholism, definitely gets us there. This system can create myths about hard work always paying off and ignores when inequality disproves this philosophy. At certain times of my career, I was incredibly worried about measuring up as the bar for success just kept moving higher and higher and higher. The American dream was a promise that if you just work hard enough, you can be and attain anything that you want. I think at this point, most of our eyes are open to the fact that this is only true for a very lucky few. But when you're raised in this system, it can feel like you are failing when the system is failing you. As if struggling financially is a moral failing of some kind, that you got laid off because you just didn't work hard enough to earn your place. But we have seen our system fail us in some pretty big ways that, while horrific for so many, opened our eyes to the fact that struggling financially has nothing to do with how hard you work. I've noticed that younger generations in the workforce have a very different relationship with work than my peers do, and it's no wonder. We all remember the financial crisis of the mid-2000s. The youngest millennials saw their parents go through economic instability right as they were becoming aware of the world, and the oldest millennials were struggling to enter the workforce. They took on immense student debt, hoping more education would delay having to join a volatile job market. They are the first generation unlikely to own a home before their 40s, and work just isn't giving back to them the way it used to. Older members of Gen Z are now in their 20s, and they've only seen the struggles of the generation before. It makes sense that, like in all relationships, if you're putting in more than you're getting, eventually you're going to want to disconnect and simply move on. If work isn't providing anything rewarding, they want to get as much as they can from it and get out quickly. Millennials and Gen Z have given rise to the FIRE movement. FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. Many young people are trying to become digital nomads, working online from anywhere in the world. If they aren't sure that their work will pay off in the long run, why not enjoy life now while you're working? Okay, so we've gone through all of this, the origins of workaholism, our feelings on work, and what overworking is doing to our minds and our bodies. It begs the question, how do we find a balance that allows us to be engaged in our work and then shut it off and give full attention to the rest of our lives? I think a massive shift happened for all of us in trying to work through COVID. Prior to the shutdown, I went into a hybrid work schedule and I had a really hard time with it. I was in the office every other week, 3 days a week, and it meant I was never really steady in any particular place. Then the shutdown happens. Now, I don't want to say there were upsides to being stuck in your house all day with the anxiety of a global pandemic just outside your doorstep. We all went through a collective trauma that I don't think any of us have really unpacked yet. If you can put that aside for a moment, there was a moment of reprioritizing we all went through. We were spending more time with our families. We didn't have to be stuck in a commute for hours a day, and the weight of our jobs suddenly felt, well, a little silly. As we've come out of lockdowns, now there is a push from many companies to return to the office, and I'm curious to see how successful these mandates will be. We all saw that time could be hours, and productivity wouldn't go down. In the wealth management business, return to office has been really slow. Now, am I saying everyone should be fully remote all of the time? No. Being in an office can be really collaborative, and it fosters relationships that make work easier and more enjoyable. But also, let's be honest, is every meeting that we used to have to fill the time in the office actually moving the needle? I'd guess probably not. I also love the intentionality of asynchronous communication. You can be respectful of how other people budget their time and connect when it makes sense. Most of us working office jobs are not putting out actual fires or saving lives. Our emails can wait an hour, maybe two. No matter your working style or location, the key to maintaining a healthy relationship with work is setting boundaries. I realized a few years ago that I desperately needed some boundaries when it came to work. I started with a coach who helped me block out time on my calendar to ensure I was making time for my family and myself. I wanted to pick up my son, but that time kept getting scheduled over. Even when I blocked it off on my calendar, I hadn't told anyone what it was for, so they assumed it was flexible, which is also interesting. I had to be brave and actually tell my coworkers, no, this is an important time for me and my family. I was lucky that they all seemed to understand. And once we had the conversation, they respected the time I set aside. I also do this for all important family events like teacher conferences, play dates, birthday parties, and I'm committed to being there fully and not being pulled back into work. Another way I've set boundaries for myself is by putting timers on my apps and turning off my devices when I want to be present with my family or when it's time for sleep. I also turned off all notifications except for my close family. My phone never makes a sound. It never buzzes in my pocket. I don't even have the on-screen badge notifications, like the little thing with a little it's the counter, like how many emails you have. No, I check my email when I check it. Taking a page from Cal Newport's books, Deep Work and Slow Productivity, I have managed my work anxiety interfering with my sleep by keeping a notebook by my bed. He recommends keeping a list for the end of your day with how you left things. He stresses that writing it down is important for your brain. It creates a ritual and a physical artifact, and it helps to mark the end of your day. Now, am I always consistent in that? No. But if something comes up in the middle of the night, I can write it down so I can put it aside and feel safe knowing it will be there for me in the morning. Having these boundaries and clearly articulating them is also important to me now as a leader. I set the tone for everyone else I work with. It's my job to normalize taking time off, ending your workday at a reasonable time, and prioritizing what's important to me outside of work. I also want to make sure that while I'm praising hard work, I don't reinforce working past the zone of productivity. Burnout doesn't help anyone. Not your colleagues, not your leaders, and certainly not yourself. I also make sure I create support systems for my employees to feel comfortable taking their time off. I love being an entrepreneur because I can take off for 2 weeks and travel and go to places where my email might not even work, but I have built that trust in my team. We have cross-training and backups for everything. We have backups for project management and domain experts. Redundancies ensure that things can run smoothly when someone is taking their well-earned time off. Now, I should say, I still haven't mastered this. I'm paraphrasing here, but Indra Nooyi, former CEO of PepsiCo, says that there is no such thing as true balance, meaning everything is getting equal attention all at once. It's really about prioritizing what you're doing at the moment. As she says, you have to leave your crown in the garage. And this is a funny one for me. When you come home, you're not the CEO anymore, you're an equal member of your family, and you have to show up that way. So that's something I'm actually working on now. My hope is that soon enough, with some practice and staying mindful, I can leave my crown in this office and not carry this entrepreneur persona into dinner time with my family. I'd love to hear more from you. What are you working on when it comes to balancing work and your daily life? What boundaries have you set? What are your struggles when it comes to working? Please keep the conversation going in the comments and share the show so we can grow this amazing community. Thanks for listening to Coded in Gold. I've been your host, David Newson. You can follow the podcast on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, and anywhere podcasts are found. Take care.